Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Spooky stories in your area. One more reason not to come to North Wales. B15. Going to my nan's through the back roads behind Abergele with my dad. Americans think rural Appalachia. No lights except the car lights, tight winding roads, high hedges. You know the type. Dad brakes suddenly, thinking he sees a rabbit, fox, or badger in the road. Just a bundle of rags, so he continues anyway, runs it over. Continue for another few minutes. Same bundle of rags in the road ahead. Drive past it. Minutes later, same thing again. Stomach sinks. Dad stops the car, gets out to look at it. As he opens the door, the car is filled with a strong smell. Can't find anything. JPEG. Gets back in the car, starts the engine, keeps driving. Notices that behind us, as though pulled along by an invisible string. You know that tumbling movement? Stops the car, both of us freaking out. Me, what is it, Dad? What is it, Dad? Over and over. He stops the car, gets out to look, and can't find it again. Getting sort of sick of this now, sees annoyance in his eyes. Just drives on and on. I shut my eyes the entire way back. Get to Nan's house. Both obviously shaken. Nan's a Jehovah's Witness, so is my granddad. Doesn't do ghost shit. Drink tea. Granddad tells us about the time he saw something similar. A mysterious bundle of rags following him on that same road. When he used to drive up and down it on his motorbike in the evenings. Nan tells us the story. She remembers her sister telling her once about the body of a baby being found in a ditch on the side of that road, abandoned by an unknown mother, wrapped in rags, collectively shiver when we realize we were being followed by the ghost of an abandoned baby, wrapped in rags. That just wanted to be close to people. Another story. Don't mind if nobody cares. Going to tell them anyway. Anglesey has been spooky since before the Romans came to Britain. Used to be the centre of Druidic religion before the Romans trashed the place. The whole island is covered in standing stones, and legend says it is where the gate to Cernwn, the underworld, is. Dunno about that, but it's a pretty spooky place. My parents are going to Beaumaris to visit my Nan's elderly friend. Leave me at Nan's, stay at a bed and breakfast, some old farmer's cottage. An old couple who live there are nice. One used to be a professor in Bangor University. All sit around downstairs having a bottle of wine. Mum hears someone walking around upstairs. Who is that? Old couple say it's a ghost, really matter of fact. The place used to be a vicarage, but they bought it when the church closed down in the 70s. Ghost was a dead priest, but never harmed anyone. Just occasionally stood at the top of the stairs, walked around the landing, etc. Made noise, but had never been seen. Parents were a little spooked, but thought the old couple were just winding them up. Finish wines, off to bed. Now, the staircase to go to the first floor was one of those ones that has 2 steps going up, then turns left, following the wall up. Mum walks up the stairs, turns to go up the larger flight of stairs, gets a terrible feeling something is watching her from the darkness at the top of the stairs. Looks up slightly, sees feet in the shadows at the top of the stairs. Doesn't dare look any higher, frozen in fear. Shouts for my dad. Dad comes round the corner, sees her halfway up the stairs, frozen in fear, staring at the floor, and at the top of the stairs sees a man staring down onto my mum's head. Dad shouts something like, "Oi!" Man literally disappears back into the shadows. Dad runs up the stairs. Brave as hell, my dad. Turns on lights, no one there, nobody sleeps all night. Too spooky for them. Beamy, 18. Grandad just died of complications from diabetes. Grandma is surprisingly chill, mad religious, so of course she will see him in the afterlife. My grandma's kitchen has one of them frosted glass windows, which leads into a small hallway which links 3 bedrooms and steps up to the attic. Was over at hers with my parents, trying to console her, which was difficult because she wasn't that upset. Dad sends me and my sister into the kitchen to make some tea for everyone. Lights are off, turn them on. The other side of the frosted glass window was pitch black. Out of nowhere, what looked like a man sort of hovered towards the glass, then hovered away again. I only saw it for about 3 seconds before it melted into the darkness of the hallway. Didn't bring it up to my nan, I mean her husband died the day before, would have been a tad insensitive. My sister and I have talked about it, both saw the same thing. She thinks it was my granddad when he was younger. Never spoke about it to anyone. This one isn't so personal, just a local legend. So I live on the North Welsh coast, which is like a thin strip of flatland, which is dotted with towns, with the sea on one side and hills and mountains on the other. Up in the hills there is very little, some poor farms, cottages, woodland, swamp, etc. One of the woods that way is surrounded by swamp, got a slow-moving river going past it. Word on the street is that there are creatures living in the swampy bit around it, and if you stay there overnight, you will be attacked by them. Fast forward a little, me in 6th form, 12th grade for Americans. A few of my friends decided to go camping there because they are teenage boys. I can't be asked, just done the Duke of Edinburgh award, had enough of that. 3 of them go up the mountains with tents, booze, and some rudimentary equipment. Stumble through the bog, get to the woods, set up tents, and the sun goes down. Beer comes out, fire is made, everyone has a good time. Later that night, my best friend, who I will call Luke, is woken up by something rustling around with empty tins and crisp packets. Too deliberate to be the wind, decided to get out to see if it is a fox or badger. Crawls out of the tent, a little bit of a hangover. Sees a large figure moving through the trees towards the swamp. Luke wakes up his friend, tries to explain to him that some guy has been messing around the campsite, probably a farmer or a policeman, and they should get going, not wanting trouble. Everyone packs up quickly, mud on the embers of the fire, tins in a bag, etc. Luke and other friend are chatting on the way out of the woods. His friend jokes, saying that he gets up to pee a lot. He could hear someone walking in and out of the woods half the night. We have an in-joke that my friend constantly pisses when he drinks. This evening, my friend hadn't been getting up to pee all evening, proceeds to crap himself. Not actually crap, the figure of speech. All of them start jogging. Hit the bog, struggle to see where to place their feet, fall down a lot, trip up a lot in the dark. The friend falls down a lot, but puts his foot deep into the bog. A hand grabs his ankle, won't let go until friends pull him out. The friend has scratches, saw them in school, nasty deep things that got infected. No one believed him, but I did after I went up there. It's a spooky place. Pretty damned rural. Here is another one, camping related. Predictable, I know, but I swear each of these happened. Spent a lot of time outside. Me on the Duke of Edinburgh award. It's sort of like an adventure trip, camping and hiking, but with volunteering too. You get a certificate at the end. Lots of school kids in the UK do them. Up way in the mountains of Snowdonia, hiking through the woods with 7 other people, between 2 campsites. It's a 10-hour walk, but we just had lunch and were rather energetic. Suddenly, the light changes, goes kind of yellow, you know, like you get just before a storm. That kind of colour change. Think nothing of it, prob's just a rainstorm on its way, pretty common in Wales. Slowly all of us start hearing a noise, kind of like wasps. We kept walking, knowing that they wouldn't attack us if we just left. For the next hour we can hear this humming noise, like wasps. We thought perhaps it was a bike or something, but the humming lasted too long and was too regular. Got to a road, humming stopped. Skies were blue, not spooky as much as weird. I read a book a couple of weeks ago about Welsh legends in a second-hand bookshop. Closely matched the description of a creature called Cernwn in Welsh mythology, lived in woods and made people horny or something, ha ha ha. Plays pipes that sound like bees. A chill ran up my spine when I read it. Running out of stories. Here is another one though. Grandfather used to be a fisherman in Conwy. When I was about 3, my granddad and my dad went fishing a lot, in the night. That is when the mackerel come out. Coming around the Orm, a big headland named after Vikings. Ormarin is dragon in Old Norse, supposedly because it looks like a curled-up dragon. Never saw it myself, but Vikings. Grandad and Dad are about 2 miles from the shore, and underneath the boat, they see cream lights moving around underneath them. Never found out what it was. That's all my stories, guys. Almost everyone in my family has a creepy story. North Wales traditionally was known as the land of giants and ghosts in Welsh mythology, supposedly because of the Isle of Anglesey. We also had quite a few alien sightings, supposedly, but I never heard or saw anything. Does anyone have any similar stories in their area?
Okay, so this one is the story of one of my aunts. Surprise, surprise, it's on Anglesey. Aunt about to get married rents out a cottage for her and her friends to get sloshed in. You know, typical hen night stuff. Everyone has a great time the first night, everyone gets drunk, there is one room for 2 people and about 8 people are there. My aunt shares a room with her best friend from school. Everyone passes out in respective rooms. Too much whiskey. Aunt wakes up in the night and sees a silhouette in front of the window, thinking it is her friend, of course. Says something like, "Go to bed, it's 3 in the morning." Rolls over to go to sleep. Sees her friend still lying in bed. Starts to scream and shout. Friend gets up, turns light on. No one there. Stay up till the morning, nursing a horrific hangover. Everyone decides it is just a drunken dream or something. Aunt goes back to bed about 11 in the morning, falls asleep, nursing a hangover. About 12 o'clock, wakes up, hearing the door open. Mumbles something like, "Go away, I am sleeping." Feels someone sit at the end of the bed. You know that feeling where the end of the bed is pressed down? That. A friend walks in through the door, asks if she was up. Bed springs back up to normal.
There's something going on in my town, and has been going on for decades. Pick-related. Grandad tells me a story of when he was about 16. Summer, sometime in the late 1950s, his best friend's father looks after the local graveyard, tells Grandad of some spooky stuff that happens in the summer, every summer. Graveyard has ruins of a small church in the old section of the graveyard. The walls are falling apart, it's mostly just rocks, but the stone altar still stands and has visible cut marks across its top. Friend had seen candles lit there during a few nights during the previous summers. They camp out every night in August on a hill about 150 meters away with a view of the ruins to try and see if they could figure out whatever it was. A week goes by and nothing. About to give up, but decide to give it one last try. A Sunday night, around 2 a.m., the candles start getting lit. There's not much light, but they can make out silhouettes of people in the ruins. Completely scared as the low, monotonous chanting begins. Decide to get closer, peer over the cemetery wall. 7 to 10 men, all gathered around the altar, wearing robes and chanting. They're spotted by one of the men. Leg it down the country road towards the town. Notice cars parked on the way up that would never be there usually. The local doctor's car, police sergeant, and solicitor. All high-class people of the time, presumably messing around in the ruins of this old church. Grandfather in work the next day as a delivery boy for the local grocer. Gets a delivery for the doctor's house. The doctor's wife answers the door. Tells my grandfather to forget about what he saw last night. It's none of his business. He starts researching more and more into this. Comes across the Freemasons, stalks their meetings over months and months, and finds patterns in their meeting dates. The same cars that were parked on the road to the cemetery belonged to people he'd seen attending the Freemasons meetings. So what had he seen? North Wales, for anyone wondering.
Anybody here done any lake diving? I lake dive a lot in Wales Lake on the A55 expressway by Llyn Cwellyn, which is supposedly the lake Excalibur was cast into. Went diving there with a friend, and both of us swear we saw huge black eel things swimming around just out of sight. We'd swim over to check them out, but nothing came of it. After a while of this, we both got pretty spooked and got out. There's a fairy lake nearby too, which I'm really keen on diving. People have reported things grabbing them in the water and hearing muffled music.
No, but I'm very interested in Fairy Lake. Tell me more about it and the grabbing and muffled music.
The lake is called Llyn Cwellyn. In Welsh, a double L is like a KL sort of. There's no real way to type the sound. The legend says that on a bright moonlit night, while on his way to Llyn Cwellyn to see his sweetheart, one of the sons of Llyn in Nanty Bedws saw a group of fairies dancing in a field by the shore of Llyn Cwellyn. He went and stood not far from them and was drawn by their music and dancing until he was right within their circle. Soon a charm fell on him, which made everything around him strange to him, and he found himself in one of the most beautiful countries he had ever seen, where everybody was joyous and happy. He had been there for 7 years, but seemed to him as if it had only been a dream of one single night. He remembered the original intent of his outing to see his sweetheart and asked permission to return to the human realm. They allowed him, along with a host of human companions, to lead back with him, and all of a sudden he found himself as if he had just woken from a dream in the field where he had seen the fairies. He then turned his face homeward, but when he reached there, everything had changed. His parents were dead, his brothers and sisters could not recognize him, and his sweetheart was married to another man. He died from a broken heart less than a week later. That's the story part anyway. The lake fairies in Wales are called Tylwyth Teg. The being grabbed in the water and the weird muffled music has been going on between a load of outdoor activity groups in the North Wales area for years. There are signs around the lake saying that if somebody falls in the lake, you should not go in after them, which always struck me as a bit odd. Probably nothing sinister though. Divers always find a lot of glain needar on the lake bed, which are always pretty cool, spoopy or not.
This occurred in 2019, near my home in northeast Wales, next to the Highlands near the town of Llangollen, Denbighshire. This was a new home for us. We are living in an old house that no one has lived in for over 30 years. It was built in between 2 old yew trees. We have 4 acres of woodland coppice behind the cottage that backs onto a wood that leads to the larger forest. When we moved in, I started to explore the land beyond the garden and worked out where I was going to put the polytunnel. The plan was to create a forest garden and to clear space for things, as it's pretty wild and thick with bramble bushes and so forth. As soon as I went up to the first level and looked to the left, where it's quite heavily wooded and dark around a rhododendron bush, I felt immediately uneasy. This is odd for me because I love the woods and go out foraging regularly and have always felt at home out and about in the wilderness. A few days after clearing the space for the polytunnel, we had a bonfire to get rid of all the brush. It was damp, so the fire made a lot of smoke until it eventually got going and burnt itself down. It was getting dark, and I needed to put the tea on, so I left my partner to keep an eye on the fire, and off I went. A good 20 minutes later, he came running into the house saying something was sliding down the bank towards him, but he couldn't see a thing. He could hear it and could tell it was getting nearer and nearer. He was really genuinely scared as he couldn't see anything. The next thing that happened was when I was in the hazel coppice just chilling out watching the squirrels. All of a sudden there was a big whoosh next to me that came from behind me. It was as if something big had flown past my head, and I could feel the wind on my face as it passed. I had really expected to see a buzzard fly down or perch in one of the trees, but there was nothing at all to be seen. That really was impossible because of where it would have had to fly to exit the wood. I would have seen it. It wasn't long after this that I finally saw the creature. I was walking my dog in the late afternoon at the beginning of October 2019. I had decided to go down to the River Dee, which has a small wooden bridge across. It is on an ancient pathway near an old church not far from our cottage. I got to where there is a big oak tree on the bank that looks down into a ravine which the river flows through and where the bridge is. That trail then leads off onto another pathway, which takes you to an old farm. As I looked down towards the bridge, I could see something big and black moving down that path, running towards the bridge from the direction of the old farm. I actually thought about the cows that roam free here, and you know how they can be when dogs are around. But as it got nearer, it became clear to me that what I was looking at was jet black and resembled a giant wolf, but it was walking upright on two legs. It had big, broad shoulders and arms and a thin waist compared to the rest of the body. I cannot say that it had canine legs or front-facing knees, but it was definitely upright, just like a human would be. It stopped at the end of the path and just stood looking towards the bridge. Its chest was heaving, like it was heavily breathing, just waiting there until it got its breath back. For a few seconds, I just stared at it in disbelief, and then, all of a sudden, it was gone. A few weeks later, I cleared a path near a fallen spruce that leads to a gate at the end of our wood. It wasn't too much work, and after clearing brambles, bending and snapping a few branches out the way, it was done. The next day, I went out to use the path I'd cleared, and at the entrance to it, there was a hazel branch that had been bent over and was being held down by a broken log, literally blocking the path I had made. I went and got my partner and asked him what he thought, because, to me, there was no way that could have happened on its own. He had to agree. I have not moved the log or used the path because I feel something doesn't want me going in that part of the wood for sure. Last summer, before I saw the creature down near the bridge, I decided to get a dog from the local rescue. I took him up in the woods to explore and have a bit of fun playing with a stick. I didn't really know why, but he kept running off as if to chase something, and I thought it was squirrels. When I caught up with him, he would just stand barking, not at the tree, but at thin air. I thought this was very odd, and day by day it got worse, as he would just stand near the house, barking at the fence and gate that led to the wood. Sadly, he never settled, and we had to find a quieter home for him. We do have a new dog, and she too is experiencing things on the land and at home.
We have visited Pembrokeshire many times over the years. Pembrokeshire is one of our favorite destinations, and we have family in Saundersfoot with whom we stay with. I am very familiar with the area, but I had not visited Haverfordwest Castle. My wife and 2 daughters enjoyed our trip to Haverfordwest very much, and we took the road, Clay Lane, to the Pembroke Road to continue our trip. It was not late at all, maybe 8 p.m. It was on that road that we traveled up a steep hill and down onto a country road. On our right was a field with what appeared to be a ruined church, which upon research was an old house, Haroldstone House. I was tempted to get out and grab a picture of the ruin when my wife shouted to slow down, and in the road was the figure of a person. I stopped, and my wife and 2 children watched a blurry figure walk from the middle of the road and disappear into a gap into the hedge, left to the right. The figure was very tall and was definitely in front of us. There were no discernible features, just the blurry outline of a very tall figure, over 6 feet, maybe taller. You could see the arms swinging as it walked. It was not dirt on the windscreen or shadows cast by the trees or an ordinary person just crossing the road. There was an actual shadowy object crossing the road. It was very unsettling, and my children, particularly the youngest, were very upset by the sighting. I am not one for the paranormal, but to see something like this in the daylight with my family has obviously opened my mind to such things. I am ashamed to admit that I did not get out of the car to see where it had gone, and the incident happened so quickly that I did not get a photograph.
Why can't I be Welsh and go camping? Finnish and no friends. Too cold for camping. We had a similar thing to your upstairs vicar in our Lapland house. My dad's father died out fishing a small ways upstream from their house when Dad was a teen. Dad's mother was working as a maid in another town, so Dad was left completely alone in the house for a few weeks. Not too uncommon in those days, mine. His family couldn't afford not taking any job they could get. whether it meant going their separate ways for long stretches of time. The younger kids were in a boarding school in the nearest large city. My father, as the eldest son, left to mind the house. Dad's religious, so doesn't do ghosty stuff. My mother happens to mention this only way after this has happened to me, but in a drunken confession when he was still a young man, Dad had once confided in Mother that the days following his father's death, he'd constantly heard the father's familiar footsteps from the second floor of the house where everyone's bedrooms were. Had been too scared to go there. Had slept in the kitchen for the week before his mother returned. He'd always figured it was just that his dad was concerned for him and couldn't go before he knew his son was safe, but it had still scared Dad because of religion. Now, when I was a teenager, I'd spent many solitary weeks in the house alone on holidays. It was abandoned otherwise, just used for holidays. I'd always felt there was someone at the top of the stairs. I didn't go up because by now it was just storage up there. I once even heard footsteps, soft but heavy like they sound when a man has karvakangatsipik shoes on.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.